It's official. It's the record only lasted a week, but Caitlin Clark goes down. Breaking news, Adam Schefter, Chicago's number 1 overall pick, Caleb Williams, broke the Fanatics record for draft night merchandise sales for any draft pick in any sport, beating the previous record set by Caitlin Clark last week. Bear down!
Dang, man.
Caleb over Caitlin.
She had her moment, and she got to revel in that for a week. But yeah, this I guess it doesn't really come as too much of a surprise. Although it's surprising in the fact that people have had opportunities to get that merch for quite some time now, since he was a guaranteed.
But he didn't know what number.
I guess it wasn't actually being sold by Fanatics and stuff.
And we didn't know what number. That's the big thing.
True.
He's going to wear number 18. Peyton Manning 2.0.
Your boy. There you go.
Kyle Orton, Peyton Manning, great 18 wearing quarterbacks in the history of NFL. Caleb Williams will be the next one. I saw that. I was like, wow, that'll be good fun way to start this thing off. If you can't tell, I'm riding on a very high. It is, I've taken no drugs except for the drug called Romadunze at number 9.
Yeah, that's a very good one. Yeah.
It's a great drug. I highly recommend it to people. And I'm so ready. No one can bring me down today.
Well,
no one.
Rome wasn't built in a day, but the Chicago Bears' next dynasty might just have been built in a day. Because we've got Caleb and Rome. I love it. Awesome. Well, I'm excited to get to this a long-awaited episode. The first round of the NFL draft is in the books. We've got 32 picks to go over. Let's get to it. All right. Well, we've got a lot of picks to get to. The first round started off as what a lot of people refer to as kind of a chalk board, as not many surprises. But then pick 8, we got our first big surprise of the draft, and then it kind of just started to go off the rails midway through. We had some interesting trades, a lot to get to. Interestingly enough as well, Mark, I saw the story break before the NFL draft that Roger Goodell was recovering from back surgery.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I see, one of the linemen that
JC
Latham, it just absolutely just manhandled him. I was like, dear Lord, Roger Goodell's going to be in a lot of pain.
Hey, he gets paid a lot of money for these hugs, so he can grin and bear it.
He's gonna have to deal with it for sure. Well, I'm excited to get to our thoughts on all of the picks and discuss the draft in its entirety, at least for the first round. But before we get to that, we weren't able to do the NFL draft live reaction show. Hopefully that's something we're going to shoot for next year. But we did have a quick interview that I wanted, Mark, for you to see. I did it with my cousin yesterday, cousin Brendan Vasco, who was in Detroit for the NFL draft, and so we got a little bit of sneak peek at the ambiance and everything like that.
Shout out to him for being a part of a record-breaking crowd. That was also the other news. Over 200,000, 250,000 people.
275.
Yeah, it was a record for draft attendance. Detroit looked great last night. Detroit showed up, showed out, and the city of Detroit was a real winner last night.
They were rocking, and there were quite a few Bears fans, as expected, in attendance. And we got one that was extra lively here. This was like 3 hours before the draft took place, and they were already partying hard. So here, I'll play this interview. It's about 7 minutes long, and then after that, we'll get your reaction, and then we'll get into our thoughts on all the picks. Here we go. All right, so we are here with my cousin Brendan Vasco. He is there in Detroit,
yes, sir. Bear
Michigan.
Down. I'm not a Steelers fan. Bear down.
That's all right. Mark will be very pleased to see that, but I like it. You're representing Chicago Bears country, well represented there in Detroit. Love it. So you're at the draft. This is your first time at the draft and your first time in Detroit. So tell me what you're thinking so far.
Yeah, it's actually not my first time at a draft. I went to an NHL draft a few years back, but this is my first time going to an NFL draft, and it's my first time in Detroit. I love it here. Nice people. I've gotten a few boos, but nothing too bad. I'll show you the space over here. It's a little less populated, so I could hear you talk.
Yeah, heck yeah.
Go Bears!
Yeah, you fucking already know, god damn it.
That's right. All right. I like that
that's
energy.
beautiful.
I think Bears fans are happy that we're picking number 1 this year, and we're not trading our pick. So
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. What's the setup been like so far in terms of like how you've been walking around and seeing all this stuff? I know they probably got tons of different booths set up, a lot of different activities. I mean, what's the overall draft experience been like so far? I know we're a few hours away from the
I
opener,
can tell you,
but
it's been exhilarating. It's been exhilarating. Yeah. We've been walking around Hart Plaza here. There's QR codes to scan on the NFL app, so you can kind of collect badges, so to speak, kind of like Pokemon training.
Okay.
Not really though. What you do is it like kind of sets you up for auctions or certain giveaways, but just kind of incentivizes you to walk around and see things. Like back over there, I'm actually pointing at Canada. Canada's right over there.
Right on.
So, yeah, it's a really cool space. We haven't got to see the draft stage yet.
Oh, that was going to be my next question to you, because usually they go all out for that. I remember when I covered it back in Chicago in 2016, the draft stage was like a huge, big deal. But that one was even kind of inside and like a small kind of like theater arrangement. But here, I think it's like an outside pavilion, right? If I remember correctly. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's what I believe that's what it's like. I haven't seen it firsthand yet, but I know it's outside. It's not inside. It's going to be a little chilly by the time the draft starts at 8 o'clock. But that's why I wore layers, man. Lots of orange, lots of navy.
Exactly. No, you're prepped and ready. I like it. And so what have you seen in terms of, I know we just saw a Bears fan, and you said you've gotten some boos, I'm assuming from Lions fans. Have there been like tons of different jerseys that you've seen out there, or have there been mostly Lions jerseys?
I've seen jerseys that I've never seen before. I mean, there's college jerseys. There's I've seen Canadian football jerseys. Like,
nice. All right.
I'm not too familiar with football, and it feels good to be here and experience something new as a sports fan.
Heck yeah.
But lots of Detroit Lions fans, obviously, as you'd expect. I was surprised. I didn't see anywhere near as many Bears fans as I thought, but it is early, so maybe we'll see some more.
I think a lot of Bears fans are probably out at the bars right now, just taking it easy, because they can rest easy knowing who that first pick's gonna be.
I don't think they're gonna have a bad route. They can't go anywhere that they're not gonna be happy. They're gonna make
Mark and I have
whoever it's gonna be.
We've talked about that on the show, and I know you and I have talked about it too. Like they really can't go wrong with that one. So obviously with number 9, there's been a lot of speculation about who they're going to take there. Do you have a personal wish list of how this first round ends up at the end of the night? What's the ideal situation for you as a Bears fan?
All right, ideal situation. Caleb Williams walks off the draft stage holding the Lombardi Trophy. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
But no, I want Caleb Williams. I don't want any of these other quarterbacks. I don't think they're even close to his talent level. So Caleb Williams, number 1. I'm okay with sticking at 9. A lot of my friends think that we should trade down, get a lineman. I would love to stay at 9 and draft a great talented wide receiver. I'd love Rome Odunze. I know it's the common pick. A lot of people want him. Obviously, I'd love to see Marvin Harrison wearing a Bears jersey one day.
That'd be great.
I think that's out of the realm of possibility. But if I had to pick a lineman, it would be Olu Fashanu for sure.
All right.
I think he has the ties with Caleb when he played in high school at Gonzaga College High School. And I really think that he would love protecting Caleb for the early parts of his career. Linemen's careers don't typically last as long as quarterbacks, but I would love to see him, bring him into the league and protect him. And maybe if we trade back and we can get Olu, maybe pick up a Brendan Rice, Jerry Rice's son in the later rounds, maybe late 2nd round, early 3rd round. There's a lot of talk that teams are going to trade up into this top 10, and not just one trade, multiple trades. So
sure
I think we're definitely these wide receivers that are available, and of course the quarterbacks.
For sure. Yeah, no, we're definitely going to see some fireworks because the first round never disappoints. So maybe the Bears will be the ones to provide those fireworks and have a big trade down and get a haul. But hey, you can't go wrong if you get a couple extra day 2 picks. There's a lot of wide receivers going day 2. And so, yeah, I mean, if you're able to get a lineman and a great wide receiver, yeah, you'll be happy with that. But that's awesome, man. I'm stoked for you. I wish I was there, hanging out, putting back some beers and getting ready to watch the big draft. But excited for you, man. I hope you have a great time.
I got a question for you, Dan. I got a question for you.
Yeah, let's go.
So, I know you're a Steelers fan, and you wouldn't even pretend to be a Bears fan over being a Steelers fan. Who do you want? Who do you want is a first-round pick this year for the Steelers?
Well, there's a lot of players that I would be good with them taking, because at number 20, there's a lot of you're not going to have your pick of the top 5-10 guys in the draft, most likely, unless they tend to fall. I would be good with either one of Graham Barton from Duke, the giant tackle who's going to be a center most likely in the NFL. They needed starting center very badly, so I would be fine with him. I would be good with Amarius Mims, who is a giant tackle out of Georgia, more of a prospect, but still, or more of a raw prospect, I should say, but still someone that I'd be happy with them taking. And I wouldn't put it past them to take a wide receiver in round 1. It's certainly possible. I just hope that they don't take a wide receiver over one of those 2 guys I mentioned there. Because then that could be an issue. But overall, I think they're also in a good situation. And hey, I'd be happy with them trading down too and getting a lineman and an extra day 2 pick to grab one of those wide receivers in day 2. So a lot of good things can happen. But yeah, those were a couple names I'd say right off the bat that I'm thinking of. So if you hear that name called, you'll know I'll be a happy camper.
Yeah, Powers Johnson or Mims, I think would be great in a Steelers jersey.
Yeah, for sure, man. Yeah, no, I think a lineman is a huge need, and so yeah, I'd be happy with any of those for sure. But Brendan, appreciate you joining the show, man. Super happy to feature this on tomorrow's episode. So come tomorrow when our viewers are listening and watching, we will already know the picks. But here you have it, the draft day experience, front and center for us here. Enjoy the draft, Brendan.
Absolutely, you guys. Thank you, listeners. Go Bears! Bear down!
Go Bears.
Yeah, I will say, shout out to him. It looked like he was about to have the best night of his life, and I'm so jealous. Also, he brought up something that I also learned yesterday. Why did no one talk more about leading up to the draft that Fashanu and Williams played together in high school? I learned that yesterday. Crazy, right? Listening to my guys on ESPN 1000 as I was mowing the lawn, as I was getting off of work, trying to get things done before the draft. And I heard them bring that up, and I was like, wait a minute. That made me just go like, oh, draft him. Like, that would be sick. Like, just for the storylines alone, if Rome Odunze wasn't still there. So he knew. I don't know how I was in the dark on that, but I love that little weird kind of fun piece of trivia. Shout out to those guys from high school teammates to first-round draft picks together. That's an incredible storyline.
And shout out to the random Chicago Bears fan that was clearly
hilarious. Hilarious.
That was great. He actually got to be very close to the stage. It seemed like he was, if you thought about like how many rows there would be, I would say he was probably like row like 40 or something in that entire mass. And he had a funny quick little interaction with some Detroit Lions fans. When you were watching the draft, they Amon-Ra St. Brown kind of cued the Jared Goff chants, but they were chanting Jared Goff like that pretty much the entire time. And this was a video about an hour or so before the draft even began.
Okay.
Get out of here.
All right. Well, hold on. I've got to.
Jared Goff. No, Jared Goff. No, Jared Goff. Jared Goff.
They're gonna have a Jared Goff problem on their hand here in a year. They just paid. There's paid St. Brown, just paid Penei Sewell. If you're Jared Goff, you're gonna probably say to yourself, listen, I want an extension, but are you going to take the Tom Brady cut, just saying this is the best place for me to be? And hopefully he feels that love and says, listen, I made a ton of money in my career. I can maybe take only $35 or $40 million a year to get that 5-year deal or whatever it might be to stick around. Because I'll tell you what, Dan, the NFC North right now is fascinating. It has quickly become one of the most hard to predict divisions in the NFL. The Lions were 2 minutes away from the Super Bowl. The Packers were 2 minutes away from the NFC Championship game, beating the eventual NFC champions in San Francisco. The Vikings feel like they just got their quarterback, and they have an incredible depth of weapons. And the Chicago Bears were a 10-win team that only got better. A 7-win team that only got better in the offseason with the number 1 overall pick. The NFC North is going to be a fascinating bloodbath of a division in the coming years.
All right, so let's start with that number 1 overall pick. No surprise, Caleb Williams goes to the Chicago Bears. You saw him with a large exclamation as he walked onto the draft stage. This is a guy, there was a lot of stuff coming into this pick about his attitude and how, does he even want to be in Chicago? That looked like a guy who was pretty stoked to be a Bear. I don't know about you.
And that's, to me, the biggest thing. We knew it was going to be the pick. Seeing his family react, seeing the way he reacted, seeing the way that he was with the fans, and also then once pick number 9 comes around, there's that now viral video of him surprising Rome Odunze when Rome Odunze is doing his Zoom call with Chicago media after Caleb found out that Rome got picked and finding him backstage. That is, to me, again, one of the reasons why you prioritize getting a Rome Odunze over maybe a defensive player at pick number 9. Look how excited Caleb Williams is to jump into this to start his career. That is the thing. Remember when the Bears drafted Justin Fields? There is that video. He was in Georgia at his home. It was kind of the COVID draft. And it was kind of like, oh, okay, cool, let's go. But he really wanted to kind of be a Falcon. Things came out. I'm not hating on Justin Fields, but the energy and the feeling it feels like, holy smokes. And I know a lot of people are throwing in my face this morning and Packers Twitter and a lot of that. And they have a right to, wow, you were excited for Mitch Trubisky. You were excited for Justin Fields. Now you're excited for Caleb Williams. Of course. And if it doesn't work out, I'll be excited for the next guy, because that's what you do. You get pumped up for your guy and you go all in. Yeah. And the Bears are doing something that we say all the time the teams need to do. Just draft another guy. Try it. It didn't work. Try again. And it feels like all of those failures, what we've learned from those failures is that you get the guy, but you bring him into a much better situation. Justin Fields, the situation he was brought into was a toxic franchise with a toxic head coach and a relationship where the GM, it felt like this was a save their jobs type of move. This doesn't feel like a save GM job type of move for Ryan Poles at all. You can say whatever you want about Matt Eberflus. That's fine. But for the GM, this is a GM that feels like, no, this is my franchise for the next decade. And I just set it up to be my franchise for the next decade. And that just feels so good this morning. With Mitchell, it felt like, all right, they must believe in him. But man, Deshaun Watson was better in college. And there was people who said Mahomes is more talented or whatever it might be. Now, again, Mel Kiper had Mitchell as his number 1 quarterback, so don't rewrite history. But even then, it did feel like, okay, we traded up to go get him, and you hope that he's better than the other guys. With Caleb, it feels like, no, he's the best guy. He's the right guy, and he's coming into a situation where he's not throwing to Equanimous St. Brown as his second best wide receiver. His second best wide receiver is a first ballot Hall of Famer. And his third wide receiver is now a rookie who in many other drafts would be considered the number 1 wide receiver and is a guy who's pumped to be teaming up with Caleb. So the vibes are really, really high, and they should be. And I'm on cloud 9. I'm not saying I'm picking the Bears to win the NFC North. I'm not saying the Bears are going to win the Super Bowl next year. I'm not delusional. There's a lot of great now teams in the NFC that are really, really competitive, but it feels like this is a turning of the page. In 10, 15 years from now, I'll look back and be able to say, hey, we went on a run where we competed for the division and made the playoffs multiple years in a row. And it started last night, with the drafting of Caleb Williams and Rome Odunze. This Bears team has got young weapons. They have exciting weapons. They have Hall of Fame weapons. They have a solid offensive line with good young pieces, the tackle positions. They need some help on the defensive line. They need another edge rusher. That's absolutely true. They need some more depth on the offensive line. I'm excited for them to just use the rest of the picks on O&D line and try to keep those trenches solid, because you have your back of your defense. You have your star pass rusher in Sweat. So there's still work to do, and it's now the keys are in Matt Eberflus and this coaching staff's hands. But it feels for the first time in a long time that the foundation is extremely solid, and they made the right choices. They made the right choices, and I'm pumped. I'm pumped.
I'm really excited for you. I'm excited for all the Bears fans out there. And obviously you could say, hindsight's 2020, of course, but and what if the Carolina Panthers,
oh my God,
today could have Caleb Williams and DJ Moore and all of their extra picks and capital from last year. But instead, and this is always the barometer to gauge draft picks in return for a player, now we have what those picks turned into.
And it's not even done yet, because the Bears still have the 2025 second
rounder next year. But the Bears have turned the number 1 overall pick last year into DJ Moore, Darnell Wright, Tyreek Stevenson, Caleb Williams, and they still have the 2025.
Yeah, and don't sleep on that Darnell pick. He's your right tackle for the next 10 years. I mean, he had a really great rookie season. So that's one of those people like to still hate on that, like, oh, you passed on, Jalen Carter, whatever. Darnell Wright was the Bears. It's been a slow build. 3 years with Ryan Poles, it's been a really slow, tough build, but it feels very similar to a lot of the way like good teams are built. You look at the Warriors. There was that time they had Monte Ellis and Steph Curry, and you're like, what are we doing? And like, blah, blah, blah. There's a slow build. Now, I'm not saying the Bears can become the Warriors, but you have to go through painful times with smart leadership, knowing that you're going to make the right calls. And I know there's still a lot of fans who listen to the show, and people say, Mark, you were a guy who said, take the haul if you can get it, and trade and keep Justin Fields. I was. I'm not good. I'm not going to shy away from that, because we look at what the haul got us. The hauls are incredible. Getting hauls are incredible. But what the Bears decided to do was really, and I give them credit for it, they drew a line in the sand and said, no. We are going to pick this guy, and we're going to run with this guy. Now, there's a lot of pressure on Caleb Williams. And if Caleb Williams it doesn't live up to the hype of being the number 1 pick and doesn't play well with all the tools and the weapons he's gotten, Ryan Poles will be looking for another job, because you missed on the most important thing. He's the most important thing still of all of this, but having him over what the Bears, you'd argue he's really just got to be as good as CJ Stroud, in my opinion, or better, to not be a total bust. And I kind of said that on a Wednesday video I did on my own YouTube channel. For Caleb Williams, my expectations are better than Justin Fields, hopefully better than any of the other rookie quarterbacks, and just as good or better than CJ Stroud. If he's in that world, he doesn't have to be Patrick Mahomes and win 3 Super Bowls. But if he accomplishes those things, then it was the right pick and the right choice, because you look at like who they passed on last year and who they could have had this year. That's his class, right? Those are the guys he has to be better than. And I feel confident that he can be CJ Stroud or better. And, if the other guys picked, as we're about to talk about here coming on up, have great careers, more power to them, and good luck to them. But I'm feeling very confident in my guy.
It's not like passing on Deshaun for Mitch. This is, you took the guy, and if he doesn't end up being it, nobody's going to fault you for it. It's like if Zach Wilson today was dominating for the Jets and Trevor Lawrence was a bust, you're still going to look back at the draft and say, okay,
we take Trevor 10 times out of 10.
Yeah.
And that's what we said that on this show. I said, once you traded Justin, the only pick is, I said it, remember? I said, put it in right now. Caleb Williams is the quarterback because of that fact. Because right now, it's a little bit of self-protection too. Wait a minute. He's the consensus. Everyone would have taken Caleb 1 overall, who if they needed a quarterback. That is absolute fact. And so we can't let that hindsight go away. And now we move on to the pick number 2, which I think is the right pick and a guy that I'm excited to watch play football.
Yeah, 6 quarterbacks going in the first 12 picks, and the second one off the board is Jayden Daniels to Washington.
Yeah.
I thought he and Drake May were fairly interchangeable. I think I probably still would have Drake May as my number 2 quarterback overall, and so that's why I personally mocked him to Washington. But Washington goes with Jayden Daniels, obviously a super talented quarterback, kind of came along in the last year and a half or so, wasn't necessarily on much of a radar. But really lit it up for the LSU Tigers.
Yeah.
And, he's one of those guys that kind of is the complete package, great dynamic rusher with a lot of, pocket presence to go with it. So Washington gets their, hopeful quarterback of the future there in Jayden Daniels at number 2.
Jayden Daniels is also one of those people that probably benefited a ton from the transfer portal and the COVID. One of the things that's interesting, one of the things that's really interesting about Jayden Daniels is that there is video, and it's true, it's real. I saw it last week of him throwing a touchdown pass to Brandon Ayuk at Arizona State to beat Justin Herbert and the Oregon Ducks. That's how long this dude's been in college with the transfer. And so you could argue if he didn't have the extra years and the transfer and the COVID, he would have maybe been a second rounder last year or a third rounder and a guy with like upside athletic, but he gets that extra year at LSU with the weapons and has the Joe Burrow type of year. And now he becomes what would have been the number 1 pick if Caleb Williams wasn't there. And what would have been, because of the upside in the modern NFL, a guy that you look at, you say he can be a real difference maker. And if you're Washington, it makes sense because Washington doesn't have the talent necessarily to be like, this is win now, right now. But they have a star wide receiver. They have to rebuild their defense. So they know they're going to be in shootouts. And you look at him and you say, this guy's instant offense in the way that Justin Fields, Lamar Jackson, those type of players are. I fully expect him to be like an Anthony Richardson, if healthy, explosive, dynamic. The problem will be, and I think this is why Caleb was favored over Jayden, is that Jayden is seen a little bit more in that Justin, Anthony, Lamar category versus Caleb is seen a little bit more in the Kyler Murray, Patrick Mahomes. No, this is a pure pocket passer with just some really special athleticism at times. And so that's the difference, right? And that's where you're going to see, hey, in the modern NFL, both guys, Lamar Jackson's a 2-time MVP. Jayden Daniels, he could end up putting up ungodly numbers. But is Jayden Daniels on a 4th and 6 with the chance to go to the Super Bowl on the line, is he going to be as good as Caleb Williams, 4th and 6 Super Bowl on the line? That's what we can now get to see play out over the length of their careers, which will be really fun and fascinating to watch. And I can't wait to see it happen. I'm pumped for the Washington fans. They're just as tortured as a quarterback franchise as my Bears. So I hope nothing but the best for him. I hope he stays healthy, and I hope he's able to do some damage in that division.
It doesn't take long for Drake May to go off the board, though. No. The very next pick, the New England Patriots, who were the first team in this draft that were kind of rumored to be willing to shop their pick. They do stand pat and take Drake May out of North Carolina, another guy that's kind of a very multifaceted quarterback prospect. A lot of comps to Justin Herbert with, maybe some Trevor Lawrence in there too, with just some of that athleticism, but largely doing his damage with his arm, can make all of the throws. Maybe just not as mechanically sound as someone like a Caleb Williams or some of the other, pure passers in this draft. But Drake May goes to a situation in New England that's not great. I actually think Washington's probably a better situation because they at least have some great, weapons around him.
Yeah.
But, the New England Patriots, we'll see what they do the rest of the draft. They got a, new regime with Gerard Mayo at the helm, and they get their quarterback here, who is certainly much more talented than a Mac Jones. So, at times his arm can bail him out of trouble, and maybe that's what the Patriots need here, because they're not going to be able to, have a receiver bail them out of trouble, or, one of their, running backs or playmakers right now. They're going to have to rely on his arm and his ability to get out of some tough situations.
Now, listen, the Patriots, they have the number 2 pick tonight in the second round. Yeah. I'm just looking
there's
here.
There's a lot of great players out there. Some good.
I'm looking.
Adonai Mitchell's right there.
I'm looking here, and then they have number 68, the 4th pick in round 3. And then do they have anything else in round 3?
They have a second, third as well, or no?
No, not from the looks of it. So they have 2 big picks tonight, and
they need to get a wide receiver with
absolutely
with a second or a third round pick at the very least.
My thought on this is kind of twofold, right? We said, New England's in this kind of like copy the Texans mold, right? I like the Drake May pick because I think they just say to themselves, listen, we're preparing for the fact that we're not going to win this division this year, right? That's what Houston Texans felt last year. So if he pops and has an incredible year, then people will be like, oh my God, like steal, right? And if he has a struggle of a rookie year, like a Trevor Lawrence rookie year or a Justin Herbert rookie year where he puts up numbers but he doesn't win, people will be like, well, duh, look at New England's roster of the top 3 guys was the worst.
And the division they're playing in.
And in the division, they're not anywhere close to Miami, New York, or Buffalo roster-wise, right? So he's got some grace room. I'm not ready to make my decision on Drake May until year 3. I can tell you that right now already, because he does have a ton of the upside. He does have a ton of the potential, but he is going into, of the top 3 picks, absolutely the worst situation. The NFC East is way more open because I think Dallas is taking a step back. Philly's very good, but New York is kind of a mess. And he's at least got Scary Terry. He's got a true number 1, Jane Daniels does, right? We just talked about all the weapons Chicago has. So for Drake, he's got a little bit of that grace period. Now, I will say, I had Drake at number 3 in my rankings purely because there are some things that concern you in the sense that he doesn't have the ability, I think, like a Jaden or a Caleb, to just make magic happen, right? We don't see that as much in his film. And in the NFL right now, there's a little bit of the guys who can just make magic happen are special. And Justin Herbert, he's not, to me, the make magic happen guy like Josh Allen. He can be mobile and he can make plays, but he is a pocket passer who wows you with deep balls with extreme accuracy. And Drake May can do that. I still think Drake May has got he's got an uphill battle, and the Patriots have a ton of work to do to support him correctly. Go find his Tank Dell, right? Go find his Nico Collins, right? Like, go get him. If you want to compare him to CJ Stroud in that sense, he's a pocket passer like CJ Stroud. Then go get him his Nico Collins and his Tank Dell and beef up that offensive line. I don't care if you're the Patriots. I don't care if you give up 40 points next year a game. Don't let him get crushed, and don't let him be thrown to Joes. You know what I mean? And they got a lot of Joes on that Patriots roster.
Yeah, they sure do.
But I like the pick overall. I do think, I will say really quickly, I wouldn't have blamed them for going like a Marvin Harrison Jr., and I wouldn't have blamed them for just trying to get a haul and saying, listen, we know our roster's so far away, even though we like Drake May a lot. But they're gonna say to themselves, I hope they're patient. They were patient with Mac Jones. He got 3 years. So give Drake May 3 years. Be patient with him and build. He is in a situation that you're going to need that patience. So be patient, Patriots fans.
The Cardinals probably won't have to be too patient with Marvin Harrison Jr. They've got Kyler Murray throwing in the ball, and he is a phenomenal prospect. So they take him at number 4. They stay put as well. We're going to have to wait a little bit of while till we get any trade ups in this draft. But yeah, That was kind of a no-brainer pick. Not much to say there. I mean, the Cardinals had a huge need at wide receiver. They have other needs, but many considered him the second best player in this draft. Some said he's the first best player in this draft. So yeah, it was an obvious pick there for the Cardinals, and he'll be an instant fixture in that offense.
It feels like the perfect fit. We know from our lifetime as the modern day Cardinals in our life, we think of Larry Fitzgerald. He is the next, there's no reason for him not to just be a Cardinal for 15 years and maybe put up a Hall of Fame type of career if he stays healthy. And for Kyler, it's a little bit of, hey, you finally got your number one jump ball go-to guy, extreme route runner. So let's make it happen. Let's go. Like Kyler Murray, that NFC West is extremely tough. I'll tell you, that's the biggest thing I take away from this draft is the NFC. Now all of a sudden you look around, you go,
yeah,
holy crap,
getting real good.
It's gonna get tough. It's gonna get really tough. And so Arizona A+, nailed it. They didn't overthink it. They did the right thing.
John Harbaugh, or Jim Harbaugh, I should say, didn't overthink it himself with the Los Angeles Chargers. One of the more obvious picks as well. We knew that they were foreshadowing taking offensive line this entire time, and they do with the consensus top tackle in the draft, and Joe Alt, who I didn't realize is a legacy player, with his dad being a Chiefs offensive tackle in the 80s. So Joe Alt goes to the Chargers. Smart move here. You got to get Justin Herbert protected. I know that they've lost their top two receivers and last year's number one receiver pick. Quentin Johnston doesn't seem to have panned out, but there's still obviously time for him to grow into his role. A lot of people wanted Malik Neighbors to go here, but it is built in the trenches, and there's such a deep wide receiver class here. The Chargers are going to have an opportunity to still get a quality guy at that position in round 2. Whereas, as we've seen, so many tackles already off the board. So Joe have a good fit.
They have top picks in the second and the third round tonight, and they do have to go out and get some weapons. They have a defense. I mean, Bosa's still there, Mac's still there. Like, they're going to be able to get after the passer. And here now you say to yourself, we have a Hall of Fame caliber talent, right tackle in Rashawn Slater, and a tackle in those Rashawn Slater who's already there, and a Hall of Fame caliber talent tackle in Joe Alt now. And, this is year 3 for Rashawn Slater. Going into rookie year for Joe Alt, Justin Herbert has got his guys for the next 10 years.
The bookends are in place.
The bookends are in place, and that is extremely important. And you look at the rushers in the AFC West, you got to deal with the Max Crosbys of the world. You got to deal with the Chris Joneses of the world, Karlaftis. I mean, there are some guys who get after the passer in the AFC West and in the AFC in general. And so they feel really comfortable about that now. And I'll be honest, you have to go get weapons, but look at Mahomes. I mean, Mahomes has Kelsey, but sometimes you got to ask these guys, and Jim Harbaugh is going to build the offense differently, but you're going to have to just, hey, Justin, we're paying you a ton of money. Like, sometimes you're going to have to make a little mountain out of molehills with maybe some of the weapons. I'd be shocked if they don't go weapon early here in the second round tonight. In the third round, if they don't leave the second or third round with at least one wide receiver, I'd be a little surprised. But as Jim Harbaugh said, offensive linemen, they look at his weapons. That's the mentality change for the Chargers. So I think it's the right pick for them, and I'm happy for Justin Herbert. Keeping him healthy and building this offense in the style Harbaugh wants it, this is the right pick for that.
Yeah, Harbaugh called the offensive lineman the tip of the spear, and
it's just awesome.
That's
Harbaugh's
a really
awesome.
cool way of putting it, for sure. So New York, the Giants at number 6, they stay put as well, and they go and take the number 2 wide receiver off the board, Malik Neighbors out of LSU, super talented guy. Obviously, I'm sure Daniel Jones might have been sweating a little bit with J.J. McCarthy and some of the other quarterbacks available at that point in time. But they do get him a weapon, and they're going to, this is going to be the year to kind of, have Malik Neighbors, show up early and often as a rookie receiver, give Daniel Jones as good of a chance as he's had, and then probably likely move off and find another quarterback in the next couple of years or so. And if it's somehow catch lightning in a bottle then okay, that's great. But yeah, Malik Neighbors was kind of the next obvious choice there for the Giants if they weren't going to take a quarterback in this spot, and probably best to do this rather than reach for the fourth best quarterback at this point.
Overall, I agree. I think this is the smart move for the Giants, like in the future. Now, if McCarthy or Nix or Penix ends up being a Hall of Famer, people be like, the Giants are so stupid.
Yeah.
I would push
and
back
it wouldn't
on
have
that.
been crazy for them to take one.
No, I would push back on that a little bit, being critical of the Giants for not taking a quarterback here, one of those guys, because you have a chance to get, in any other draft, would have been the number 1 overall wide receiver. You are in desperate need of a weapon in your offense. And I will say this, Daniel Jones, I mean, they're just financially, they're tied to him for this year. Like, they're just tied to him. And they did what I thought the Falcons would do, which we'll talk about coming on up here. Just try to get a weapon in, try to get a great player to make this year bearable, knowing that in a year, less than a calendar year from now, they'll be able to rid themselves of Daniel Jones without as much of a financial burden. There'll be such a smaller burden, and they'll be open to then shop for a veteran quarterback or a rookie quarterback, and being aggressive in doing so. I will say this. I also think part of this is that the Giants don't pick until the middle of the second round. So if they were to go quarterback here, you wouldn't be able to get a game changer for your team, really. Because then by the middle of the second round, you're saying, oh, we hope to find a starter, but not like a game changer. Malik Neighbors can be a game changer, and they'll able to sell themselves to their fan base saying, listen, if Daniel Jones can't win and stay healthy with a guy like Neighbors on the outside, a true number 1, well, then we definitely know our answer. We have to move off of him. And it wouldn't shock me if sometime in the 3rd or 4th round, the Giants also draft a quarterback just to have another guy on the roster to say, if things get ugly, you can, hey, we're going to give this rookie a try, but now knowing that we're all in on the quarterback for next year.
Yeah, and let's not, forget that the way the Giants roster is set up, it's not, unthinkable to say they could be right back here at 6, 7, 8 next year and have an opportunity to take, a top 2 quarterback potentially versus, the number 4 or 5 prospect off the board.
Yeah.
So solid fit there and pick by the New York Giants. Tennessee Titans at number 7. They go with J.C. Latham, the mauler out of Alabama, massive right tackle. Talk about another team that's kind of building up their offensive line to protect their young quarterback. Will Levis is now, in a good spot. They went and got Calvin Ridley. They have Treylon Burks. They got young wide receiver talent. Now kind of building out the bookends of that offensive line. J.C. Latham, one of the, top tackle prospects in this draft. And so far through 7 picks, I'll take the L on putting Drake May at the Commanders. And then you, of course, then in turn took Jaden Daniels to the Patriots. But other than that, we were perfect through 7 picks. But that is where it ended.
Yeah, well, I'll say this about the Titans. I think this, again, smart decision for their long-term future. You didn't need to push it and go with an Odunze here or anything. You have a ton of money committed to the wide receiver. Don't forget, Hopkins is there. So you have weapons for your quarterback. Your offensive line needed this type of piece. You got Skoronski last year. You get Latham this year. Now, all of a sudden, you say to yourself, hey, maybe the offensive line is a strength of our team with our young quarterback. You have dynamic running backs. You have weapons on the outside. Now, I think if you're Tennessee, you focus the rest of this draft on trying, for the love of God, to find some help on your defense, because the AFC South is going to be a really competitive division, especially if Levis can blossom in year 2 with protection and those weapons. I like the pick a lot.
And I mean, you want to talk about, a division with some great, interior defensive lines. The NFC South has some dudes to contend with as well. So there is that. And I will say, like, up to this point, and really the top 11 picks, barring the next one that we'll talk about, was really, to me, very patient, methodical, and very not giving in to the emotions of the moment. It seemed like all of these teams were taking very sobering picks.
Yeah.
And
I agree.
Like no one panicked. It didn't seem like, oh shoot, all of the quarterbacks are out the board. We're the Giants. We got to take a quarterback. No, they're like, well, let's just chill. We've got a great, Malik Neighbors here. Same with Tennessee. Like, okay, it's not the sexiest pick, but it's a solid pick here. Number 8 did come as a surprise, and it's what everyone's talking about now with the Falcons. After signing Kirk Cousins to a 4-year, it's really a 2-year guaranteed contract. They go and take a quarterback at number 8 in Michael Penix Jr. And it wasn't even J.J. McCarthy, who many, thought was the clear number 4 quarterback. But really, it was him, Penix, and Bo Nix all in a tier, by a lot of consensus there. So it didn't surprise me that they went with Penix over J.J. McCarthy. It surprised me that they did decide to go with the quarterback here, because my thought is, if you can't trade down, which I think they probably attempted to do, if you can't trade down, then I don't think you go ahead and take the quarterback there. Then you stick and take one of the more sensible picks, in my view, and try and build your team that way, and maybe try and move up later in the first round if you want to get a quarterback. But they go and take a quarterback here at number 8, and a lot of accounts are saying that Kirk Cousins was unaware that quarterback was even in their discussions, and so he was a little bit taken aback by the pick. It's not like they owe him that, but at the same time, you would like some transparency about what the plan is. And surprising by the Falcons here to stay put and take a quarterback with that pick.
I find it really, really surprising in the sense that it felt like they had a smart plan, right? It's basically a 2-year deal with Cousins. The third year is basically like a cheap $10 million. You know what I mean? Like, we keep you for that third year, and that third year, it's, hey, you're now late 30s and you're helping our rookie quarterback go along, right? And so it felt like they had a great. I mean, we said it on the show when they signed that Cousins deal. Oh, it makes sense. Go win now. The division's open. Get talent. Win now, and try to surprise people over the next 2 years, and then Kirk can, you have him as like a really cheap option to have him start while you bring along the next quarterback, and you hand it off the reins. Now it'll feel like, man, if Kirk is struggling a little bit, they're just setting themselves up, I think, poorly for the media to be like, hey, you spent the 8th pick on the guy. We know that Caleb's going to start. We know that Jaden's going to start. We have a feeling that maybe even Drake May might start over Jacoby Brissett. I would start Jacoby if you're the Patriots. Give Drake time. But it looks like J.J. McCarthy might start over a Sam Darnold. They don't owe Sam anything. So there's going to be that pressure if the Falcons are 3-6 or 3-7 and Kirk has looked not great and he's mobility coming off the Achilles, like they're just putting themselves in a really bad spot, right? It's a bad spot.
I wonder if they have legitimate concerns about his Achilles. Like, I wonder if their medical staff has some serious, trepidations about it.
And they maybe don't want to say that, and so that's why they're saying, hey, we don't think we'll ever be picking in the top 10 in the next couple of years because we have Kirk Cousins, which is also, I do think, slightly valid, right?
That's fair.
You never want to be the team that gives a ton to move up, because look what the Panthers did, right? The Panthers last year were picking 9. Like, they were like the Bears, like, hey, we have a solid roster. We're missing pieces, but we need to go we need a quarterback. And they risked it all. And now look where they're at. They're in the dregs of the league, and they're in a definitely bad spot. They maybe saw that too and thought, oh, God, we can't let that be us. And if you believe in Penix, take him. So I don't hate the pick. I don't, because I like Penix. I like Penix more than I like McCarthy. And I think Penix is in a great spot. Like, he's got young weapons.
No, he is.
He's got a good offensive line. He's got an emerging defense. He's got a young defensive head coach in a winnable division. And all he has to do is sit there and learn and stay healthy, and his chance will come. His chance will come. And so I love it for Penix. And if you're I just don't love it. Like, it seemed like they had a plan, and now they're just the front office and the coach they're just going to have to answer a lot of questions. And that's never a spot you want to be in. But I like the thinking. I like it for Penix. It was surprising. It was surprising. I will say when we're going to do an episode probably next month or something, like trying to figure out like who set up most for success. I don't know how you don't put Penix. I think he's got a brighter future right now than a Drake May, I'd argue. Definitely brighter than Bo Nix. You can argue that McCarthy and Caleb have a slightly better situations, but he's in a great spot. I'm happy for him. I just don't.
And there's not a lot of pressure, on him personally because he's not yet being chosen to be their immediate savior. He's the guy that's there to develop. And
who would you have taken if you were Atlanta? Like, what would have been?
I mean, they could have obviously gone, a lot of different ways. I would have said, take Laiatu Latu or Dallas Turner, like get a dynamic pass rusher. I would agree. Have been upset if they went with the number one corner on the board. Like their defense needs some.
You have a defensive
help.
coach,
and I know that Raheem Morris is there and he's going to help build up that defense. But you need players to do that.
Yeah.
Also their offensive line, it's not the worst, but it's not very good either. Like, get a great tackle. I just think there's so many other things. They could have gone so many different ways.
Yeah.
And offensive line would have been solid because you got Bijan and
you need to protect your investment in Kirk. And that's the thing, part of it too, is it's like with the Vikings, we're talking about, like, they only spent $10 million on Sam. Like, it's a 1 year, $10 million.
Right.
It's nothing.
Yeah.
It's a write-off.
I do think Sam is going to get a month minimum. Like, I think
Sam will start. They need the Vikings, unless McCarthy just balls out and looks amazing, they should start Sam. But I do think, like, you spent a lot of money on Kirk. It's not a little money. It's
that's $100 million.
Guaranteed. Yeah. And you need him to win now for that not to look ugly. And to help him win now, there was a lot of players on that board that help him win now. And maybe it is the underlying thing is they don't trust the health. And now they're saying to themselves, we need to be prepared. And maybe this will come and it will look great. Maybe it will end up being a really great look for them.
Yeah.
And maybe in 2 years, when Michael Penix is the starting quarterback and he's lighting it up with those weapons and that good roster and that weak division, we'll look and be like, this was a great pick. It's a great pick. The real problem I have with it is at 8, to me, Penix's ceiling is Kirk Cousins. Like, I don't see Penix as Mahomes, as Allen, as Joe Burrow. Like, he's not. I don't see that as his ceiling. His ceiling is Goff, Cousins. And at 8, that just feels rich, which is why I'm also going to say that about J.J. McCarthy and Bo Nix coming up. It still just feels rich because I think their ceilings are Kirk Cousins. So we'll see.
Yeah. Well, Rome Odunze goes to your Chicago Bears.
Love it.
And, I know that he and Caleb met on the flight out to the draft, so that was kind of foreshadowing right there.
He worked out. He's already caught passes with DJ Moore, and Caleb Williams. Yeah. So, like, they've been working out in LA, and I think there was a great quote from Bears GM Ryan Poles that he thanked his assistant GM Ian Cunningham, who just got an extension, who'll probably be gone next year. He's going to get a GM job soon. He's great. He said, he's like, Ian held me back. I was about to trade up because I was getting nervous. Like, I want Rome. So I love. They didn't have to trade up. And I love that it fell this way. And I don't need to say much else. I think to me, the biggest thing is this was the right smart pick.
Again,
they could have gone tackle. They could have gone edge rusher because you need offensive line help. You need defensive line help. But the Bears offensive line, remember, they did add some veterans, like, to mix it up. They believe in their tackles, Jones and Wright. Jones isn't an all-pro. Wright could become an all-pro, but Jones is a solid starting left tackle in the NFL. He's a solid starting left tackle who's still really young, who could still continue to develop. And when you add in the fact that they added some good veteran depth to shore up the interior of that offensive line. The Bears have a solid offensive line. So it's not like it's like, oh, you see that meme where it's like Caleb, the cartoon, and he gets sacked throwing to a good wide receiver because they draft, wide receiver, not offensive line. It's not like he's coming into a disaster. It's not like it's an absolute firestorm at the offensive line. So I think it was the smart pick, the right pick. And now Caleb will get his chance to just grow with these guys, right?
Absolutely.
DJ Moore is young and in his prime. Rome Odunze's a kid. And then Keenan Allen is the Hall of Famer in the room who you hope is there this year and next year to just make this all work really, really well. And then he goes off into the sunset retirement. And then you have two studs who you're on different contract lengths with. You don't have to pay Rome Odunze for 5 years. 5 years. So it's just beautiful. It's just beautiful. And it's setting up really, really, really well.
It's a great, great situation for Chicago. That's why I was telling you, I tweeted about it, that if the Bears completely fumble their remaining draft, this is still an A+ draft. It doesn't even matter. Like, obviously you want to get your, extra picks and grab depth and all of that stuff, of course. But even if the rest of this draft is a bunch of busts, this is still a win-win draft for Chicago Bears.
And I will say there's that famous tweet going around, and I do think it's valid, that the Chicago Bears, they don't have a second round pick. But remember, they used their second round pick. That pick is Montez Sweat. So when you say, and remember, the Bears defense was completely different. They went from a bottom 10 defense to a top 10 defense with just Montez Sweat last year. So, and they re-signed the corner Jalen Johnson. So like when the Bears aren't picking here in the second round, that's Montez Sweat. So you got to, you remind yourself, and then when they don't pick with that other fourth round pick, that's Keenan Allen. So that's all part of hey, we're building this team in multiple ways. It's draft, it's free agency, it's trades, it's a lot, but it's ready to win now. And I'd be okay to see the Bears move up in the second round, or to make an aggressive move to get another, fill a hole at the edge rush or interior offensive line center or interior offensive line. But I'd also be really okay with them staying pat with their remaining 3 picks and just getting offensive and defensive line depth and just saying, hey, we're going to hope to hit on someone here and otherwise just add depth here, the remaining or the draft, because you got your stars. You got the difference makers.
They're absolutely set now. I was just looking at Adam Schefter just tweeted out that a trade for Brandon Ayuk or Debo is now unlikely. So they're going 3 wide receivers,
and they're basically tell Ayuk, hey, if you want to show up to camp or not, fine with us. We got a guy in here. We'll talk about that when we get to it. But that's an interesting story.
So the Vikings give the first trade up of the draft. They trade up 1 spot with the New York Jets to number 10 to select their quarterback, J.J. McCarthy, likely to fend off potential other teams that were looking to trade up into that spot. I'm guessing maybe Denver was in play there.
Yeah.
The Raiders, something to that effect that made Minnesota kind of panic and get up and take J.J. McCarthy. I don't think they gave up too much just to move up 1 spot here with the Jets. But as we see later, they move up again. I think they gave up a lot in total for these first round picks. And to me, I'm a little skeptical of it. But they get J.J. McCarthy. We've talked about it. Great spot for him to fit. We thought that this was a good kind of pairing for J.J. and for the Minnesota Vikings because they were unlikely going to get one of those top 3 guys. And I think maybe they were a little surprised after they saw a 4th quarterback go off the board that it was Michael Penix that went and not JJ. So they get JJ here at number 10. And it seems like because they moved up that he was a guy they had been targeting this whole time and just weren't confident he was going to make it to them at 11. So here we are. It's a good spot for JJ. Offensive, minded head coach, a young head coach, solid offensive pieces around you. And you don't have to start right away. So pretty good all around situation for JJ McCarthy, who has won at every level that he's ever played at. So there is something to be said for the fact that he is just a winner, true and true.
He's a suburban Chicago kid. I'm rooting for him in general. Obviously, he's playing for my rival. I will say this, as a Bears fan, I love that the Vikings ended up, even though they got 2 first-round picks and they were, starters, they're going to be starters, and you think like, okay, really good players. I do love that they gave up some other picks because the Vikings need a lot. Like the Vikings don't have a complete roster as the Bears, Packers, and the Lions. They have more holes going into the draft than the Bears, Lions, and Packers. And they gave up a lot of depth picks in this to get 2 starters, which they needed. They needed a quarterback. They needed an edge rusher. You lose Danielle Hunter in the offseason. We'll get to the Dallas Turner pick here in a bit. So let me say this about McCarthy. We said it over the last couple of weeks. I truly believed he needed to go to the right spot to be worth a first-round pick. He landed in probably the best spot you can go to because you have the number 1 wide receiver in football. You have a really great number 2, an emerging number 2, maybe the best number 2 in football in Jordan Addison, up there with the T. Higgins, with the Keenan Allens. And then you have a really great tight end in Hockenson. And you have a really, really fun, special, young offensive coach in O'Connell. So he's in a great spot. If he doesn't succeed, it's on him. Now, what his ceiling is, I don't know. I don't know. It feels like his ceiling could be Joe Burrow. It does. Like his game has Joe Burrow qualities where he's kind of really flexible, really mobile in the pocket. I will say he is in a place to succeed. If he's not leading the Vikings to the playoffs within 2 or 3 years, it'll feel like it's on him, not the Vikings. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah.
I would have taken, if I was heading my pick of quarterbacks, I would have taken for my team, Caleb, Jaden, and Drake ahead of McCarthy. Knicks, I wouldn't have. I like McCarthy more than Knicks, and I with Penix, it's kind of a toss up. I think Penix is more ready to win now in the league, which is funny because he's going to be the one who's sitting versus JJ. But we'll see. I mean, JJ's got every opportunity in front of him to be a star because of the place he landed and the weapons he's around. Now it's just, can he do it? I would suggest, unless he's just magical in camp, let him sit as long as you can.
Yeah. No, I agree with you there. So it's going to be the perfect situation for him to kind of just stew and develop and get the most out of what he's capable of doing. I agree.
The NFC North and the AFC South are just so much fun. Young quarterbacks, Jordan Love, JJ McCarthy, Caleb Williams, Jared Goff. And then you look at the AFC South, Lawrence, Levis, Stroud, Richardson. I mean, 2 divisions, 8 teams, a bunch of fun quarterback debates. And Jared Goff would be the kind of outlier because he's not young, but he's the guy who's also a number 1 overall pick who just led his team to an NFC championship game. So it's like, the guy you maybe want to poo-poo on as far as that was also a number 1 pick and was just in an NFC championship game minutes away from a Super Bowl. So 2 divisions, 8 teams, a lot of interesting quarterback discussion in there.
Yeah, I gave up a 4th and a 5th for that one, and then we'll talk about the compensation to the Jaguars later on in the draft. Number 11, Ola Fushanu.
Yeah.
The offensive tackle out of Penn State goes to the Jets, and also, something that was, to me, a big boy, kind of pick. It's a smart decision
Totally.
to kind of secure that. The Jets have had injuries, forever. They always get injured. And it's not like their free agent picks were, the greatest tackles to ever live. Like they're still a work in progress. And to have
Tyron
a young
Smith is one of the great all-time tackles. He's just not he's not as good as he once was.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Is like they're just they're very old and they're not going to be the top 5 tackles in the NFL next year. But all that being said, they're still going to need some youth. And I know Aaron Rodgers went on Pat McAfee's stream and was like, well, this isn't really a need. It's like classic Aaron Rodgers, like gotta downplay the pick. It's like, and he said he was excited for it, whatever. But, just to throw that in there. He probably wanted Brock Bowers or something like that. But no, it's just smart. I mean, you got to protect Aaron Rodgers if you want to get the most out of what you're going to be able to get from him for what, a 1-2 year rental at this point.
The Jets were in a spot where their hand was forced. Like, they did the right things in the offseason to bring in tackles, and then you add another one. And now you're going to say to yourself, no matter what happens, we'll feel good about whoever's playing tackle for us. Like, that's huge. That's huge for them. And now it's like, hey, Aaron, you got to go earn your money. And like, I know it's not like you have no weapons. You added Williams from the Chargers. You already have Garrett Wilson. You know what I mean? Like, you have your guy in Lazard. Like, there's people there. You have your running back, your great young running back. So the Jets,
and they'll probably get a receiver here. Like, who knows?
Yeah, this ensures to me, the Jets, this ensures that they won't be a disaster as long as Aaron's healthy. Like, this ensures they won't be a 5-win team because of this pick. I really feel that way.
Were you surprised at number 12 here with Denver going quarterback?
Yeah, I was.
I mean, they take Bo Nix out of Oregon. I like it now that I've thought a little bit more about it. I'm like, they don't have capital, so that's a problem in and of itself. It's like, when would they be able to take a quarterback? Because they're not going to be able to really probably take a quarterback next year unless they are the worst team in the league, which I guess is a possibility. But I think Sean Payton's too good of a coach there, and I think he believes in himself. This might be a little bit of delusions of grandeur from the Broncos brass as well, to be like, oh, it doesn't matter. Like, we'll be able to, mold whoever. But they take the 6th quarterback off the board at number 12. So they're getting the 6th quarterback. Perhaps they'll say he was higher up on their board. But yeah, that does surprise me. I know they're talking up. He is technically, statistically, the most accurate quarterback ever in college football. But it was an interesting pick. I thought after we saw 5 go off the board that the Broncos were going to probably have to pivot if they stayed at 12, or at the very least hope that they could trade down. My guess is they just couldn't trade down. So they said, all right, well, we're going to take quarterback then.
I mean, the only team after they'd have to worry about taking him would have been the Raiders. And then it's like
right after him. Yeah.
It's like, do you let him go to your division rival? Listen, I think Bo Nix is going to be a fine NFL quarterback. I think he is lucky that he gets Sean Payton, but he's unlucky because that roster is a nightmare. That roster is got Cortland Sutton and the
and they've been talking about trading Cortland Sutton. He's been the rumor of trade.
Yeah,
talk,
and the offensive line is shaky at best. Running back position shaky at best. Weapons shaky at best, and defense shaky at best. You have Patrick Surtain, and that's pretty much it. Like, so
yeah. And they lost their middle linebacker to free agency.
And at best, he was the 4th quarterback in this draft. Like, at best, right? Because he's in that group with Penix, McCarthy, and Nix, where you say, all right, well, now it's pick your poison. What do you like more? You're going into a division with Patrick Mahomes. You cannot tell me you feel confident and great, no matter who your coach is, that your guy is Bo Nix. Like, you just can't do it. It's just, you can't do it. And so, good luck to them. I thought it was a reach. I said it all along. The Broncos should just have the number 1 pick next year. Just be willing to be bad and be ugly. Just get demolished in your division and take a year, take your lumps, recoup, add as much talent as you can, and then go get the guy next year. And they refuse to do it. And now I have a feeling the Broncos will be picking about 12 again next year, and they'll be in the same spot. And I think the Broncos are one of those teams that I don't see them making the playoffs for the foreseeable future at all.
Yeah, I'm surprised that they weren't able to find a suitable trade partner. I think the problem maybe for them, not so much so that they could pick a better quarterback. The fact that 5 quarterbacks went told them, wow, no one's really going to like stress now to come up and get one of those guys. And so the price just wasn't fitting.
But look at
what
all
they probably
the talent.
wanted. But I think they should have gotten. They need more draft capital. They
left so much talent on the board after they picked
Brock Bowers.
I mean, Fuaga, Latu. I mean, the number 1. Byron Murphy, a great D tackle. Turner, the number 1 edge in the. There was a lot
of tackles, tons of offensive.
They could have used Brian Thomas Jr., wide receiver. I mean, they're like. So good luck. Good luck.
Yeah. Well, Brock Bowers to the Raiders after that also did surprise me a little bit. They just took Michael Mayer last year, who was the best tight end in the draft. But that being said, with Antonio Pierce, they're probably like, let's just beef up this offense. They're probably going to go 12 personnel all the time now.
Yeah.
And have both of these guys on the field. And he's at that point, they were probably like, look, the best player on the board is Brock Bowers by probably a mile. So let's just take the best player available.
I think it makes sense. You have Devontae Adams. Michael Mayer is a different type of tight end than Brock Bowers. Brock Bowers is a lot more Kyle Pitts than he is Michael Mayer. Michael Mayer is more George Kittle, right? Like physical, third and 5. Yeah. So I like it. I mean, I think they're just saying to themselves, again,
it's a good pairing. Yeah.
Best player available. We're going to give whoever's throwing the ball a ton of options, and we are going to just add talent to this roster. The Raiders know they need to go find their quarterback. It wouldn't shock me if they take a guy in the second or third, a Spencer Rattler, someone to have to throw out there. But again, the Raiders feel like they're going to be picking top 10 next year, and they're okay with it. They're comfortable with it. The Broncos weren't, and I think that's what's going to help the Raiders' future over the. I think the Raiders' future is brighter than the Broncos' future. I'll say that right now.
Here's the thing, too. If the Broncos do pick top 3 next year, now what do you do? You're gonna take a quarterback again? I think they have to, because if they're picking top 3, that means Bo Nix was trash. Right. Yeah, very true. But then that's just like my point is
it's wasted.
Obviously,
and they remember they gave up enough. They wasted 2 draft picks on quarterbacks this year. They had very little resources, and they went Bo Nix and Zach Wilson.
Yeah, exactly. All right, the Saints, bring us back to reality in some sense. So with Talise Fuaga out of Oregon State, the tackle there. So shoring up the offensive line. The Saints are kind of in a purgatory right now. It's just kind of the situation that they found themselves in. And so, build the trenches up once again and just hope for the best. They're going to have to figure out what they're doing long-term at the quarterback position. But for now, get a really talented offensive tackle off the board. And, it makes a lot of sense. The second tackle or third tackle, I should say, in a tackle heavy draft, it was a solid move. Nothing much.
Listen, they're tied to Derek Carr. They don't necessarily need weapons. They have weapons. They need to be physical, and they need to protect Derek Carr and give themselves a chance to compete in this division. I think it's a move that helps them, again, compete in this division. I think the NFC South, with them, the Falcons, and the Bucs, is going to be another fascinating race to 9 wins, race to 10 wins. Who's going to get there first? And so this helps them in that pursuit.
The NFL record coming into this draft for
players in a row,
offensive players in a row to start a draft was 7 in 2021. We have now 14. Gone 14 picks. It has been doubled. And then at pick 15, we get our first defensive player off the board, Laiatu Latu out of UCLA. I didn't even know this. They talked about in the broadcast that he had actually been medically retired by medical staff in college.
I did know that.
And he kind of just said, no, I'm going to keep playing football. And he had a standout season, of course, and now is the first defensive player off the board. Obviously that must have scared a lot of teams, but the Colts felt comfortable with where he's at in his health, and Laiatu Latu, I mean, good for him. It's a great story. Hope that it pans out for him in the NFL. And really, I mean, the Colts needed to make this pick on the defensive side. We had mocked that as well, that they just needed to get a guy there, and they do. And Latu, as long as he stays healthy, going to be a really solid pick for them.
He's that medical issue is one of the reasons why I always said if the Bears go defense at 9, I would prefer Turner or someone else, because it does scare the living daylights out of you. Now, the Colts needed an edge rusher. They need to add some physicality to that defense. Again, we talk about a quarterback-rich division now, so hopefully he can, listen, he doesn't have to have a 30-year, 15-year career to make this pick work. Have, on your rookie contract, be really special and help the Colts win games, and it'll be a smart pick. If he doesn't get a second contract, I don't think that's a bust if his health is a guy who's going to play 5-6 years in this league, but help you be really, really productive and be a maniac for 5 or 6 years, then it's a successful pick.
Yeah, agreed there, especially at 15. I mean, it's not, you're not picking top 5 at this stage of the game. I think we mocked Cooper DeJean there to the Colts.
Yeah, I'm surprised he's still on the board. I am.
Pretty crazy. Byron Murphy, standout defensive tackle out of Texas, goes next. So we got back-to-back defensive players, and we'll have a third in a row after that too. To the Seattle Seahawks, good pick there too. I mean, they could have gone on either trench, I think.
Yeah.
But I like it. I think it's a good pick.
You forget that Seattle's got a loaded offense as far as weapons go. Metcalf, Lockett, Jackson Smith, and Jigba. And then you say to yourself, all right, if maybe Penix had fallen or a quarterback had fallen, they like to say, hey, sit under Geno for a year. Maybe. But I think Seattle actually did themselves a really good thing here. You have a young defensive coach from the Ravens, McDonald's, now your new head coach. A guy like Murphy is going to set the tone for how he wants to play defense. And in the same way that those Ravens defensive always have a strong nose tackle interior rusher. So that's going to help the back end of that Seattle defense, which still needs some work and some drafting. So I do like the pick there. And I do like that Seattle, again, didn't force the quarterback. I think Seattle is a team that if you're a free agent quarterback next year, is going to be a really desirable place. If you're a rookie quarterback, in the draft next year, it's going to be a really desirable place to go because you got a ton of wide receiver talent, a good young running back core, solid offensive line, and a defensive head coach is going to work on that side of the football. So I think they put themselves in a good position with the pick. Wouldn't shock me if Seattle does find themselves a quarterback in the second or third round, just again to have a guy in camp. Now, I know they went and got Sam Howell, so maybe they'll wait till 4th or 5th round, take a flyer on a quarterback. But I think they're in a really solid position to be, once they find their franchise quarterback, this is the type of pick that helps them. Hey, we have a really solid football team to attract someone to come lead this franchise.
Second trade of the draft goes to, once again, the Minnesota Vikings. This time they trade up 6 spots to take Dallas Turner, the edge out of Alabama. Really good pick. But what they gave up was next year's 3rd and 4th, as well as this year's 167. That might have been a 5th. But all in all, they still had 2 first-round picks to trade up a total of 7 spots. They gave up a 3rd, 2 4ths, and a 5th. And that's 4 picks right there. Next year, they only have now 2 picks in next year's draft as it currently stands, a 1st and a 5th. So the Vikings are running thin on resources now. So they better really hope that these picks pan out. J.J. McCarthy, Dallas Turner, 2 really solid picks, I'd say. Yeah. But yeah, you hope that it pans out in the way that Houston had it panned out last year, where they traded up to get Will Anderson at number 3 after taking CJ Stroud. But we'll see.
It's that same idea, right? We talk about it all the time. In the modern NFL, your priorities need to be quarterback, protect your quarterback, get after the other team's quarterback. The Vikings prioritize 2 of those 3. Now they just got to pan out. So I give them an A, you know what I mean, in the sense of they addressed smart needs and what they needed. But again, they're a roster that I feel needed more picks. And so the fact that they're just kind of punting on the rest of this year's draft and next year's draft is interesting because I feel like they need depth, especially on the defensive side of the football. But this was a giant need. You lose Danielle Hunter, and so now you get to replace that production, hopefully, with what I thought was the best edge rusher in the draft and turn around Alabama.
Yeah, they're going to need to go defense with their next 2 picks in this draft at the least, I would say, to be able to help.
And shore up that interior of the offensive line a little bit.
Yeah, that could use some help too. Amarius Mims, the project, but very, very tantalizing prospect out of Georgia.
Right before you.
Tackle, goes to the Cincinnati Bengals. And honestly, I'm happy about it because I didn't think Troy Fautanu was going to even be here. So I didn't even have him as honestly a realistic option for the Steelers. But Amarius Mims is certainly a guy that could turn out to be an absolute stud. He's just much more of a project. But yeah, the Bengals, who have needed offensive line help since they drafted Joe Burrow, since before they drafted Joe Burrow, get another guy that, is obviously a huge piece, 6'8", 340 pounds. And some consider it could be even better than Broderick Jones, who was the Steelers' first-round pick last year. So yeah, I like the pick for the Bengals.
Yeah, it makes sense. Protect the quarterback.
To get a guy to protect Joe Burrow. Yeah,
and they got in what's his name is the free agent tackle as well from New England. So Brown. So hey. So again, and he's a giant human being too. He's like 6'8". So it's like, hey, it just makes sense. Protecting Joe Burrow is the utmost importance. They should draft offensive line in the first round every year for the rest of Joe Burrow's existence, just because he has got health issues, and keeping him upright and healthy is really, really important.
The LA Rams don't necessarily replace Aaron Donald and get the free tech they need, but they do get Jared Verse, an outstanding edge rusher out of Florida State. Really solid pick for them at number 19. And I thought, for the most part, it was no surprise they went defense with this pick. And the fact that they, the way the draft fell, giving them kind of their pick of the litter of some great edge defenders, defensive linemen, corners. Jared Verse seems like a great pick here. I personally still would have liked to see Cooper DeJean go in the first round. And so I thought maybe that's a pick they could have used here. But to get that edge rusher and help, buffer the loss of Aaron Donald on that D line, really solid pick for the Rams.
Yeah, the Rams have a ton of draft capital. They have a lot of picks coming on up, including 3 tonight, 1 in the second, 2 in the third. And I think, again, they're a young roster that, remember, I said it all last year. I like this young roster. And by the end of the season, they were one of the hottest teams. Those young players, they get good coaching and they start to fall into line. I think this is another great addition of like a young player who will come step right in and be able to get great coaching from a great coaching staff in a division where rushing the quarterback and rushing, getting after the other team's quarterback is paramount. Love the pick here. They got some more work to do. I still think they need to go out and find themselves a little offensive line depth, interior, just to keep Stafford clean, and maybe another weapon or two. But this Rams team, they're going to be adding a lot more young depth pieces over the next couple days. And I like the Rams and where they're headed. This is a good piece for them.
Their first round pick since 2016 and Jared Goff. Incredible stuff.
They got a Super Bowl out of it.
They did. It worked out pretty well for them. Steelers take the offensive tackle Troy Fautanu out of Washington at number 20. Very excited about this pick. Really stoked. I wanted them to go offensive line. Graham Barton was the other one that I thought maybe was in consideration here for them. But the fact that Fautanu kept falling, the Steelers, and I believe them when they said this specifically because it was very, very detailed, said he was in their top 10 overall players in this draft. And so when he fell to them here at 20, it was an instant write it and submit it. Very excited. Watching his tape is awesome. He is extremely animated and violent and clearly loves football. So that's pretty exciting to have him there. And the last time the Steelers took a Troy in the first round, that ended up working out pretty well for them. So hopefully this is the same thing. But we talked about bookends. The Steelers now, for the first time in their franchise history, have taken an offensive lineman back-to-back drafts in the first round. And Broderick Jones, Troy Fautanu, two top, you could argue top 10 to 15 prospects in each of these drafts. Very solid bookends now.
Yeah.
And now they can kind of help build that stature and foundation for not just this year's quarterbacks in Fields and Russell Wilson, but whoever their eventual quarterbacks of the future will be.
Those tackles are there.
I really like this. And they get Arthur Smith, whose whole thing is about building a strong offensive line,
physicality,
13 personnel. This is the way to go. They're building some animals up front, and I'm here for it.
Yeah, happy for you. A good pick. I like where they're headed. What the thought process is on that. You see that a lot. Is that teams just when you trust that now you have like what the Chargers did. You got your bookends, you got your tackles. That just makes everything else kind of fall into line. Steelers already have weapons. What do you project the Steelers need to do second, third round tonight? Where would you like to see them go?
A wide receiver is still a big need for this team.
That wide receiver number 3 slot.
If they attack that at 51, but also center. I mean, you double down on offensive line. I wouldn't hate it if one of Zach Frazier from West Virginia or Jackson Powers Johnson is still available at 51. I think it'd be pretty tempting to not pass on one of those guys.
Agreed.
So, hopefully they can, find one of those guys falls to them. If not, then I say you attack wide receiver. But corners in play too. I mean, they need another corner opposite Joey.
And there's
Porter
some good
Jr.
ones on the board.
There are. So I guess it's a good thing is that they have options. They don't have to make a panic pick at one position. They can pick from a lot of different positions here.
Just going off that, expect a lot of movement at the top of the second round, because this is where teams go, holy crap, that guy's still on the board. We expected them to be a first rounder. And now you're going to see already hearing reports that Buffalo's already receiving calls. Hey, they traded back. And we'll get to the Buffalo trade back here later in a minute. But you're going to see, you always see movement at the top of the second round, because it's that, holy crap, we had a night to now sit on it. That guy's still there. What would it take to go get that guy?
Yep, absolutely. Chop Robinson out of Penn State goes to the Miami Dolphins. They really needed to address the defensive side of the ball.
They let Christian Wilkinson go.
Like, they do not need a wide receiver, not at least not nearly as bad as they do on the other side of the ball. They've had injuries with Bradley Chubb, and so this is good. Like get a really proven,
I like Chop
prospect. Really good stuff. In
that division too, you need to get after Josh Allen. You need to make him uncomfortable. So I like the pick. I like the pick a lot. And Miami has built a really interesting culture. It feels like also this is helpful for their kind of win now. They're in this kind of last window of like, we got to figure out what to do with Tua here. And so this is, again, a move for them in that kind of win now. A lot of people talked about Miami maybe should look to take quarterback. I like that they're saying, hey, we're going to go one more year kind of all in on Tua, and then we'll figure it out next year, depending on what happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Are you surprised that it took this long for the first corner to go off the board here at 22 to the Eagles? And to the NFL to let the Eagles get, the fastest corner available on the board?
Yeah, mainly because I just think that the cornerback is now becoming a more premier position based on the explosion of the wide receiver. But there's a lot of good corners still available. And I do like this move for the Eagles in that division. We talked about a Scary Terry, now Malik Neighbors. Obviously, you got to deal with Dallas, CeeDee Lamb. So, having a premier corner in the NFC East is a good thing.
And he gets to practice against A.J. Brown, who just got the money bags, almost $100 million for a 3-year extension.
Can we take a second to quickly talk about that? And since you brought it up, how smart of the Lions and the Eagles.
Yeah.
You like your guys, lock them up to deals now, and now all the pressure is on Cincy, is on San Francisco, and Minnesota. They say, we know that Justin Jefferson's better than A.J. Brown and Amon-Ra St. Brown. They're not that much better, but now you're going to have to pay them. If you're Justin Jefferson, you're saying, wait a minute, Amon-Ra's getting 30 a year. I want 37. I want 38. And that is going to be, those numbers are going to be gigantic. And that's going to put those teams in hell, which is why I think the Niners are so smart. They're basically saying, yeah, we'll just move on from you. We're not paying you. If you want to stay in a winning culture, we'll sign you to a reasonable deal. But no. We're just going to draft a wide receiver. Keep moving. Yep, it's fascinating.
Well, and they're becoming a dime a dozen now. There's so many, as we've seen in this first round alone.
Because I would not pay Brandon Ayuk what the Lions paid Amon-Ra, and I would not pay Brandon Ayuk what the Eagles paid A.J. Brown. I wouldn't pay Debo either that money either. And so just because of that system and that coaching staff and those players, they're so smart of the Lions and the Eagles get those deals done. And now the pressure's off. It's on you guys. Good luck.
The Jacksonville Jaguars were probably
ecstatic,
jumping for joy in the draft room when they traded out, traded down 6 spots, and pick up 2 extra picks and still get the
huge
next
win
best
for Jacksonville.
available wide receiver off the board, and Brian Thomas.
A for Jacksonville. A.
Yeah, phenomenal stuff. And this is also setting up a scenario in which they are being clear about what their approach is. They are not taking a step back on offense and trying to, take their foot off of the gas. They're saying, no, we're leaning in. Yeah, we got rid of Calvin Ridley. We
didn't want to pay Calvin Ridley, and I don't think he was I don't think they like the fit. He seemed like a little trouble. Yeah.
It wasn't working. So we'll go get Gabe Davis, and we'll get Brian Thomas, 2 deep threat, big
to go with Christian Kirk.
And then we got Christian Kirk still, who's a great route runner underneath, and we've got Travis Etienne, we've got Evan Ingram. We are going to push the football down the field. The Jacksonville Jaguars are going to throw the ball a ton this year. They're not stepping back off of this. And yeah, I think it's a good move and all around great pick by them.
Yeah, investment in Trevor year 4. It's a big year because you got to figure out 5th-year option. You're probably going to pick it up anyways, but it's a big year. And I think Brian Thomas Jr. right now, I'd rather have him maybe than, Calvin Ridley, even though Calvin's proven. Calvin's 30 years old already. And
he's cost you $100 million.
Yeah, he's costing $100 million. So I love it. Great move for Jacksonville.
Yeah. Second corner off the board is Terrion Arnold, who many, would say is the best corner off the board at this point. But the Detroit Lions, with the trade, go ahead and get their guy, Terrion Arnold. A very Detroit move here. And very solid all around. I thought it was good for them to go back to defense on this pick. And, especially now that they've got to contend with the Bears receiving brass, and they've got Justin Jefferson in division, and, just continue moving this train along. Very solid overall choice by the Detroit Lions. And I'm sure they were a little surprised that he was available to them here. And that's why they, traded to get there.
Yeah. Love the move from Detroit. Again, they're in that rare spot where it's like they don't have a ton of needs. And this was a need. It's been kind of a thorn in their side, the corner position. You go and get a guy who I think maybe you could argue is the best corner in the draft. He's a Saban prospect. And again, you don't need him to be a 10-year corner. You need him to be really good and live up to that rookie contract for the next 4 or 5 years, and then and help you stay on top of the division right now. And a division that is loaded with wide receiver talent. So, you got great young wide receivers in Green Bay. We know what you got in Chicago. You have the best wide receiver in the NFL in Minnesota. So this was a need and a great decision from Detroit.
Some great receivers in the Dallas Cowboys division, and they traded back with Detroit for this pick. They could have taken a corner with that one. They do have Trayvon Diggs, of course, but you can never have too many quality corners, especially when you're dealing with all of those receivers there. But they do trade down to pick 29. At 25, the Green Bay Packers take Jordan Morgan, one of those names that was like kind of a little bit out of left field. I mean, he was on a lot of people's boards in terms of top prospects. But
the Packers.
Maybe not the top 32 prospects. So this was a little bit of a head scratcher for many.
Yeah, I like that they addressed offensive line. I think it's smart.
Yeah, that was smart.
Again. And if they value him as a first rounder, then more power to him. But I think the name was a little like, who? Like,
yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Arizona? Like, and it would be one thing if the name is who, but it comes from like an offensive line school, like a Michigan, Ohio State, Georgia, Alabama,
Iowa,
but like Arizona. So that's the Packers. The Packers, they march to the beat of their own cheesy drum up there in Green Bay. I don't have like a grade for it. I think, again, smart to address the tackle position. They need to address the tackle position, and hopefully hopefully for the Packers it works out for them. But I certainly was glad to see it wasn't another elite edge rusher or a corner. I think just solid offensive line pick. The Packers are a really good roster. It's a really, really good roster. The challenge in the NFC North will now be, hey, we got a first year of film on Jordan Love. He's really going into, will he have a sophomore slump? You know what I mean? That's kind of where he's at. And can he avoid the sophomore slump? And can their young team continue to grow together with a really good coaching staff? And can they compete for the division against the big bad Detroit Lions? It'll be NFC North is going to be so much fun this year.
Yeah, it's going to be fascinating to watch. I'm very much looking forward to it. Graham Barton doesn't take too long to get off the board. He goes here at Tampa Bay. A really good fit here in Tampa as well. I thought this was I
love that name. I wanted him.
Yeah. I mean, and who knows if he's going to play center or if he's going to play guard. The Bucks can kind of do whatever they want with him there, and so the versatility was probably attractive from that perspective.
Yep.
But get back to running the football a little bit and continue to protect Baker Mayfield. You've invested in him now, and you've got still the core pieces on offense together. So all around,
felt good. Like the Saints move where it's just like, hey, we have a division that's winnable, so let's add a piece that helps us win now. And this is a win now mode. Atlanta was the only team in that division that didn't do that. Didn't do that, and so the other two competitors for that division decided, let's go for win now move, so you can't hate on it. Now, if he ends up being a bust, like, okay, you look back, hindsight's 2020. But again, I know a lot of people listening probably right now are like, man, they love every pick. Well, first of all, there's a lot of offensive linemen drafted. A lot of teams fill needs. So yeah,
those picks, yeah.
You can justify a lot of the picks. So I can justify it for Tampa, absolutely.
Yeah, a lot of times in the first round, it is it's there aren't too many like crazy moves. Obviously, we've had just a couple.
And half of these players will not turn out to be as good as the projection. We know
absolutely.
that.
Oh,
so
yeah.
we all know that when you go into it. But when you're looking at how am I supposed to know until you watch the game? So
Arizona's pick from Houston that they got from last year. They go and take Darius Robinson, the edge out of Missouri.
Hate the pick. Terrible pick. Awful. I thought it was going to be a bust. Reach.
Yeah. Love it.
No,
I wasn't crazy about it though. Honestly, yeah, I thought there might have been some other better defensive options that they could have gone for here, but just trying to address the defensive side of the ball. I can't fault them for that.
Yeah, their defense needs a playmaker, and can he come in there against a division that has really solid offensive line play and quarterbacks who you need to get after, and so. You give your defensive coach a weapon to play with on defense. I think that's fair. You know what I mean? Like, all's fair. And when you look back at, hey, you go get the most talented offensive player. Now go get yourself a defensive player that you hope you can turn into a guy who can be a double-digit sack guy in a really tough division.
Yep. At 28, the Buffalo Bills had an opportunity to take, one of the top wide receivers left available, but they traded with their arch nemesis, the Kansas City Chiefs. There's been a lot of contrarian takes on this. There's been a lot of people hammering the Buffalo Bills. I am in the hammering the Buffalo Bills camp for this one. It's not just about getting capital. It's about who you're getting capital from and who you're trading with. Likely Kansas City's picks are going to be at the very, very, very bottom of whatever round you trade to trade back. And you let Kansas City get the fastest receiver ever at the NFL draft. Look, maybe he doesn't pan out. Maybe he's not a great
maybe he's
player.
Another guy who just burns, and like with Tony and all the other guys they brought in who just haven't hit.
Yeah, but he's a guy that has like, if there's a gadget player that wouldn't work elsewhere but can work in the NFL, leave it up to the Kansas City to get that out of that guy.
Yes, especially remember the kickoff return rules changed.
Exactly.
Your returns are going to be a factor. They got the guy who's like, oh yeah, he's going to just be our return guy too. And we don't know what's going on with Rashee Rice. We just don't. But I expect him to miss a considerable amount of time this year. But he's also a really great number 2 to Rashee Rice. Like if you look at that like pairing,
their styles. Yeah.
Their styles, it does match up when and if they're all together on the field together. So I love who they targeted. I hate that the Bills let him do it. Now, the fact that the Bills traded again, also it's like, oh, okay, like it's now the Bills are just in that mode where, and it makes sense. The Bills have some holes. Like they just need some depth. They need some guys at a multitude of positions, and they're gaining that. So I can appreciate that, but it does. If I was the Bills, I'd trade again. Just keep trading because that makes it feel less worse. Like, no, our goal is just to trade. We're just trading, trade. Like it feels like they should trade again. They also could really use a Mitchell from Texas here at the top of the second round. I was a little surprised. They went with Xavier because it does feel like the other option for Rice that would be a really great fit would have been Mitchell from Texas, who's like the tall, big, go grab a ball wide receiver.
Yeah.
But they went with the burner speed guy that Andy Reid's probably just like sitting there eating chili cheese fries going, I got plans.
They got a weapon in general to use across the board. The tackle out of Oklahoma, Tyler Guyton, goes to the Dallas Cowboys.
We like him.
29. If you saw the various streams, Micah Parsons and CJ Stroud were doing a stream together. Micah Parsons was livid with the pick, which is it's a weird look to welcome a new first-round teammate, and you're just sitting there sulking about the pick.
Newsflash to current NFL players who are still playing in the league. We get it. Everyone's streaming. If you were on line last night, there's a million streams. I do too.
Yeah.
There's a million streams.
But be cognizant.
Just love whatever your team does. Love it, because you're gonna look like a bad teammate. It's gonna cause headlines,
especially with all of the stuff that already came out about Micah Parsons.
What did he really want? I didn't see the poster. Like, what did he really want them to take? A wide receiver, or like what were they looking?
I don't remember. I mean, honestly, the clip I saw was only
they need a tackle,
and it was them announcing the pick, and then him just sitting back, stroking his head, and he was silent. He was just sitting there shaking his head, looking pissed.
Like they need a tackle.
Reading off the credentials,
and he's a big physical, projected first-round grade type of guy. Like I Dallas, for all as crazy as they've been, they have built.
I thought that was a fine pick.
Dallas is as crazy as Jared Jones is. He's built a team that just every year is going to make the playoffs. Dallas is not a Super Bowl contender, but I could see them 10 wins, NFC wild card, make the playoffs like that. That's Dallas right now, and they've built a team that's just competitive, and this helps them stay competitive.
Yeah. The next corner to come off the board, Clemson's Nate Wiggins.
Like him a lot.
Goes to the Baltimore Ravens. I feel like in another draft, different year, Wiggins would have been in the top 20 easily.
Yeah.
Maybe even like scratch the top 15 there. Really talented, long outside corner.
Love it for Baltimore too.
Yeah,
it's a great fit. I know you do. I saw your tweet with Alex Corza, who we should try to get him back on the show this offseason. Yeah. And we now is a great time to get in all these guys now you can really start, like, your team's kind of set, right? There'll be a couple small moves. Teams will keep making some small moves, right? But the Ravens know how to draft, and they know how to find guys. And in that division, and in the AFC, having a really big physical corner who can run and break up passes and fit into that Ravens scheme, it's a good pick.
Yeah, there are a lot of teams in the NFL that are, regarded as just great drafting teams. The Packers are a part of that. The Steelers are a part of that. And part of my
the Ravens
is saying, I hate being in the same division with another team that drafts so incredibly well. And that's the Baltimore Ravens. It just seems like, especially recently, they have not missed on very many top picks. And another great pick here by them at 30. And then at 31 came the surprise from the 49ers to go wide receiver. So, and to be fair, the 49ers were in the Super Bowl.
They don't have a lot of holes.
They don't have a lot of holes. So they can afford to get another great weapon. Watch out, rest of the league.
It's a great message. I love what the Niners did. They have a position of strength, and they just said, hey, over the last 72 hours, all of a sudden, our guys are getting really chatty and really noisy. And we love you guys, and we want you to be a part of this team. But we're also not going to be beholden to you and just end up paying Brandon Ayuk. I love Brandon Ayuk, and I really love Deebo Samuel. Deebo hasn't been healthy enough, especially after last year, to prove I'm going to pay him $30 million a year. Just not going to do it. And Brandon Ayuk is a very talented wide receiver, but he is not Amon-Ra St. Brown $30 million a year worthy. And he's probably sitting there with his agent clamoring for $30+ now million a year. And I'm not doing it. And by picking a wide receiver here, it allows San Francisco to just say, hey, we want you. Please show up to camp. But if not, we're not going to be hamstrung. We're still going to be one of the best rosters in the NFL. Now, the actual player they chose, I like it scheme fit-wise. You know what I mean? Because again, we talked about Mitchell and some of the other wide receivers who I really like. I'm shocked didn't go in the first round. I'm not shocked that that the Niners prioritize this player over some of the others.
Yeah, I like Ricky Pearsall. Really talented player, and I think he will complement the Ayuks, the Deebo Samuel as well. They've got a wide array of options now.
Get the ball into his hands. He's a get the ball in the hands type of guy, which is exactly what the Niners love.
And then at 32, the Buffalo Bills traded back once again, just one spot to the top of the second round with the Carolina Panthers, who take their guy out of South Carolina, keep him close to home, Xavier Legette. They're the big body, breakaway speed wide receiver out of South Carolina. That was a good pick for the Panthers.
Yeah.
And I guess at this point, if you're the Bills, maybe they were hoping that Xavier Worthy or Pearsall would be there for them if they traded back. He wasn't. Maybe they weren't crazy about Xavier Legette because they had to assume that the Panthers are probably eyeing him at this point. So they said, you know what? And here's another point to the Bills trading back here. It gives them a full day to kind of reassess what they're dealing with. At this point, maybe the board didn't break the way they foresaw. And so they're like, we're not, maybe they were just not totally sold on what the crop players were left. Give us some time now to reassess, to field other offers.
And the Bills are the bell of the ball now. Bills are the bell of the ball now. So they're getting all the calls. And they could just take the player they think is best available or fits the need. I like the pick for Carolina
needed.
And I give Carolina a ton of credit for stealing some thunder late in the draft and saying, hey, we're getting roasted left and right online. They needed their guy. And I appreciate them saying, we're going to go get our guy. And now you say, all right, Deontay Johnson, Legette, you still have the other wide receiver, Adam Thielen. Yep. So now you say to yourself, hey, Bryce, like we brought we're bringing in talent here. Now it's not Hall of Famers like the Bears have or whatever, but it's something. Like it's the right decision. They've got to now, if you're Carolina, continue to work on that offensive line. Because again, if you're Carolina, I don't care if you're giving up 40 points a game. The goal is to try to score 30 points a game and to make your fan base think Bryce Young is the guy. And so that is the utmost priority. The Carolina Panthers should only continue to draft offensive pieces that hopefully make Bryce Young look like he is the guy who is now going to be compared to, he's not only compared to CJ Stroud, but he's now compared to Caleb Williams and the other guys, because the Panthers could have had their pick of all these guys too. Like the Panthers are in that social media hellhole that I know I've lived in for a long time with Mitchell Trubisky. And so they need Bryce Young to have a bounce back year. This is a good move to help fill that need.
Perfect way to end the first round, and we're getting ready for rounds 2 and 3 later on tonight, and then the remainder on Saturday.
Can I make a bold prediction in the quarterback world from here on out? So I truly think the next quarterback off the board, I think Spencer Rattler is a guy that you're going to see someone take a flyer on here soon. But then also keep an eye on Joe Milton out of Tennessee. Joe Milton is a dude with, like, when you look at his just skill set, he's Anthony Richardson in a lot of ways. Like, I can throw it 75 yards on a rope with a flick of the wrist. I can run the ball. I'm as raw gets. But there's going to be someone, I think, in the second round or trading up for in the third round who says, just let me get that guy. I just want to see that guy in camp. Whether it is Vegas, whether it's Seattle.
San Fran could afford to take
San Fran. Someone who just says, I just want to see that guy. Because Joe Milton and Spencer Rattler are those two remaining names. Listen, there's a lot of quality guys like the Keaton Slovises, Pratt from Tulane, Sam Hartman is another name. People like he's a ready quarterback. But Milton and Rattler are the guys who you look at that and you go, let me get my hands on that guy. I just kind of want to see. So New York, someone who just has a coach they're confident that just says, I want to see what that guy looks like in practice. And so Milton and Rattler are the guys I'd keep my eye on for, like, someone's going to go grab them. Someone's going to go grab them, and they're going to be fun to see where they land.
As for the receivers, I imagine Adonai Mitchell and Keon Coleman are going to be hearing their names called within the first 10 picks, probably.
And Kool-Aid. I think Kool-Aid. Someone's going to go get Kool-Aid.
Yeah, guy that dropped. Yeah. And then we're going to see, we're going to start seeing a run of these corners pretty soon because there's,
Monday show's going to be fun.
Taken in this first round. Yeah. The second and third round is almost as exciting, if not sometimes more so, because you get more picks out of it for your team. Steelers have 3 tonight. Looking forward to seeing all of that. But yeah, we are closing in on 2 hours here for this full comprehensive first round recap show, but it was all very well worth it. Give an inside look, or a detailed look, I should say, at each of these picks and all of these teams and the state of the NFL now after day 1 of the NFL draft. So exciting stuff. And we'll be back here to recap it all in the near future, recap this entire draft and give our thoughts on who are the winners, who are the losers from the 2024 NFL draft. But for now, that will do it for us here on the Football Lounge with Mark and Dan, part of the For Frequency Sake Podcast Network. As always, check everything out at forfantasysakeqc.com. You can check us out on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram at FB Lounge Pod. And please be sure, if you're watching this on YouTube, to like and subscribe. Helps us out big time in the algorithm. We appreciate you all, and we will see you back here next time.